what is the objective, and the objective for me is to leave with you more questions than answers. Okay? I have an advantage. I know Hebrew, okay? But while researching this parasha, which has a very special touch to my life, and maybe this would be the drash or even the remez behind everything, I realized that the Hebrew language was a struggle for everybody ever since Yeshua died, ever since Second Temple was destroyed. The Jewish scholars acknowledge that through the years some kind of spirituality essence has diminished through the Jewish people. And one of the signs is the actually ability to understand not the words, but the context. Okay, and I want to address the first sentence in Parashat Vayigash. Okay, let me read it in Hebrew. Vayigash elav Yehuda vayomer bi Adoni. Okay, yedaber na avdecha beozne Adoni ve'al ichar apcha be'avdecha ki kamocha kepar'o. Now, when I read this, I can have a nice painting, or I can make it into a small movie. Okay, but this is because I don't really understand the Hebrew that it was written in back then. Now, just for like small knowledge for us, okay, I went back and asked myself, and this is a question, Hebrew origins, okay, timeline, and we have this nowadays in the tip of our hands, and it's very cool. So if we are talking about Hebrew, we should talk about writing. And if we talk about writing, we should ask ourselves, when did writing start? And it started roughly 3,000 years BC, when people started living together in cities, and they had agriculture and stock and stuff, and they would need to have some kind of a system that will write 6 oxes, I don't know, like 10 kilo of rice, etc., etc. Hebrew was developed 1,000 years after that, 2000 BC. English, okay, the early English, which you guys, I'm for sure, but you guys cannot even speak, was 1,000 years AD. Okay, so we're talking about 3,000 years of difference. Now let's talk about some cool aspects of the timeline. So we're saying Hebrew, okay, and it's very important. Let's talk about the name. The name Hebrew comes from the name of Ever. Ever was a guy, okay, he was actually a grandson of Noah, okay, the son of Shem, and he was a guy that decided not to go through with the Babylon tower, okay, and this is why, and it says that is why it was called Babel, okay, Babel, because there's the Lord confused the speech of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. And this is actually in Hebrew to confuse, Babel. Okay? So this is a bit about the name. It was a German scholar somewhere in 1981 that decided to call it a Semitic languages, that all the languages were originated in the Middle East. Chinese came somewhere around 1500 BC. So we're talking about Hebrew coming forward from the times that there were tribes into our biblical story, okay, which had the Babylonian story somewhere between 1765 BC. Then you would have Abraham, okay, which is forward, and then you would have Jacob, the hunger in Israel, and coming down into Egypt. So we are talking about 120, 100 years going forward, and you have Hebrew over there. Okay, that's very important. They conversed in Hebrew. Okay, and I can take this into the parasha. Okay, to sentence which is Genesis 45:12. Okay, where Joseph actually revealed himself, okay, to his brothers after Judah give him a big speech. Okay, he breaks down, he takes everybody out, starts crying. They still don't believe him. Okay, they still don't believe him. Okay, now the conversation over there is very, very amazing. And let me pull us back to my methodology. Okay, I realized that the enormous amount of data is something that you cannot compile. So I had to take several things, okay, and try to put them together. So this is why I'm jumping back and forth, taking the Hebrew as a subject over here. I will address the Vayigash, okay, and show how the Hebrew over there, when you understand it, and while it was written by Moses, okay, which also is a part of the timeline of the Hebrew, actually gives us information which we cannot read nowadays and understand it. But another aspect of the Hebrew language in this parasha is when he tells them, okay, you can see for yourself, and my brother Benjamin for himself, that it is indeed I who am speaking to you. Okay, this is actually the translation. Okay, I took from the internet. I don't know if it is written exactly like that, but again, this is some kind of a conversion. What he's saying is, you can hear and see my mouth speak in your language. Okay, and this is again Hebrew coming into the picture. He was trying to reveal himself, okay, and saying, it's Hebrew, I'm speaking with you Hebrew. Before that, while Judah was addressing Joseph, they used a translator, okay, a person that basically translated the Hebrew of Judah to Joseph, which of course knew Hebrew, but that was the game, that was the game back then. So this is another aspect of Hebrew, and I will address other aspects. Let me go back to my methodology. I wanted Hebrew to be something which I can bring forward, and while learning myself the context of biblical Hebrew, I can share that with you, okay, and maybe bring a small insight, okay, into whatever is right now and whatever you know, and to bring a bit more value. Now, it would be a journey with my doing. Writing, Googling Parashat Vayigash brought me into Bar Ilan University. It seems that they have professors talking about each parasha all over the years. The addressing Hebrew as a language is something that I took from Dr. Luba. Okay, and she has an article saying that one of the scholars addressed Hebrew and basically said, okay, so we know Hebrew was a spoken language. When did it become a holy language? Okay, when it became a holy language. So his thoughts on the matter is that it became a holy language only through worship and practice, and basically and that's another thing, thinking about whatever happened after the Second Temple, is that the Hebrew was actually a language that wasn't used on a day-to-day basis and became a holy language. And the scholars through the years actually don't call it Hebrew.
Make sure you keep it close so
don't call it Hebrew, they call it the Holy Language. When Israel, a country was formed, they decided to call it Hebrew. There was a decision to call it Hebrew. And in the Tanakh itself, it is called Yehudit. Yehudit because, and in some of the Onkelos, you know Onkelos? Yeah, Onkelos did some kind of a transliteration. So they are calling the language Yehudit because it was spoken in the kingdom of Judah back then. Now, let's circle back to Vayigash Elav Yehuda Vayomer Bi Adoni. Okay, it's not only that he is saying, sorry, okay, it's not only that he's focusing the conversation with him. Okay, the actual, so scholars says that this is an actual new construct of words, okay, which indicates that there were meanings behind Judah, and Judah actually had their strategy. Okay, they were after a situation where the gold cup was discovered. Okay, they knew that Pharaoh is not that how do you say, forgiven person. He would probably kill the thief, and they were building up strategy. And this is what the scholars say, that from the actual Hebrew and the actual phrases which were not used before in the Torah, they understand that there were two options to Judah. First options was to go with the rhetorics, how do they say? Rhetorics, a big speech, okay, trying to move the, how do you say, move the feelings, okay, of Paro for the story about his father, etc., etc. But even so, he was prepared to go to war. Okay, he was prepared to go to war, and this is why he went forward. Okay, he went forward. This is the first. Okay, this is the first word in the sentence. So he approached. Okay, so when we think about that, and this is what they've been doing since 2,000 years ago, is why was it written like that? They could have written it otherwise. Okay, they shouldn't write Vayigash. They should put it maybe in the end. Okay, but they put it in the beginning of the sentence. So that was the first thing Judah decided to do, and they have, before that, before he came in front of basically the second of Ramses back then, Joseph, and before that, when they heard that Benjamin is involved, he already called, okay, all the way to Canaan, and had done, his brother prepared the troops, and they were willing to come forward and fight Egypt and destroy everything over there. So Vayigash, when scholars ask themselves why did they wrote it as they wrote it, because it doesn't match previous writings, the actual order of the words. Okay, they went forward and find more references saying that he actually had two strategies. The first one was to fight, and the second one was to talk. Okay, and that's another aspect of Hebrew for you. That's about Vayigash. Okay, the first sentence. I have more if you want. I have more. So the data was enormous. Okay, I want to leave us with some questions. Okay. So we said Hebrew comes into play, first of all, while reading the context and trying to understand exactly what was going on over there, okay, while cross-referencing other events, okay, from previous sentences or parashot, and even going into the early books and finding all kinds of segments that back up. So Dan was also So I don't remember exactly which book, but Dan was also, if Judah was, his, I don't know, his animal spirit was a lion of Judah. So Dan also had some references about a lion, so he was also combative. Okay, and again, we're talking about tribal leaders. They had their people. Everybody were like hyped, okay, and ready to go to war to save Benjamin. And that was a very cool thing to learn. Okay. And some other questions that I want to bring before you, and then I will address some answers I found. One second. And a lot of pages opened. Okay, so they're asking, and this is again something they are analyzing through the text, okay, after Judah is finished with his speech. They're saying that Joseph couldn't hold himself. Let me just read this. Joseph could not longer control himself, all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everybody withdrew from me." So there was no one else about when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. Okay, so this is it's actually 45:1, and they're asking, so why did he got everybody out of the room? Okay, especially when a few sentences going forward, after he speaks, everybody knew. Okay, a few sentences forward, it even says the news reached Pharaoh. So why take them out if eventually everybody would know? So again, several references. The first one was connected to the Hebrew. Okay, and again, this is scholars saying, okay, so Hebrew is not enough. Even though he presented himself in Hebrew and told him, come closer, okay, and hear me speak Hebrew, I think the gap was somewhere around 25, maybe even more, 27 years before the last time they saw him as a child. So it wasn't enough for them to hear Hebrew. So he told them, come closer, and he actually showed them he was circumcised. And that's another reference they are saying for the Hebrew. And okay, he told them, come over. So basically, Judah is near, and then he drew him even nearer, okay? Because he understands that they cannot believe that he's saying what he's saying. And another reason why he wanted everybody out is that he was speaking to them and telling them, I am the brother you sold, okay, this and that. He didn't want to upset either his brothers by everybody hearing how they treated him, and he didn't want to basically tell everybody how his family treated him as well, okay, and this is a very nice aspect. And in that, basically, his speech back to them, he also answered another question of why wasn't he angry of them? Okay, that was his time for revenge, you know. He got them there. Everything was said. He could do whatever he liked. Prison, chopping their heads, I don't know. Everything was said. Okay, but this is actually something that is written in the Pshat. Okay? And he's telling them. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord of all his household, and ruler over the whole land of Egypt. Okay, so this is us going from a very plain text and trying to understand the Hebrew tweaks and the Hebrew added information of what happened, and going into the larger picture of I don't know if I said correctly, providence. Yeah, like okay.
Yeah, God
Yeah.
Everything.
So when I researched that, I went. So they are taking us back to the story after Joseph is telling about his two dreams and sharing the dream with his father, which tells him. Alumot, do you remember? We actually read this last week. The story with the bundles, yeah. Their bundle will bow to my bundle and everything. And after that, he tells everybody are going to Shechem to have the sheep and stuff. Then Joseph go out to his father orders and try to find them. He actually don't find them. The script says that somebody was there waiting for him and then telling him where it is. And without that, we probably have a different narrative. So everything was basically arranged, and everything was supposed to be as it is. And another aspect of the language is the difference between promise and swear. How do I swear? An oath. An oath. Okay. Forward. Jacob come and meet Joseph. And this is a bit more information about the politics back then and the well manner or the way to manage yourself in those times. Jacob, let me just read this for you guys. I don't have the transliteration, but okay, let me explain. So Jacob tell Joseph, okay, once I'll die over here, because he's dying not in Israel, he's dying, Joseph put them in Canaan, not actually Egypt, a bit above Egypt, but not actually Israel. He told them, make sure that they will bury me in Israel. He says, okay. And then he says, take an oath on that. Okay, and why? Why should he take an oath? An oath back then was a very strong thing. And it's not that Jacob didn't trust Joseph. Doesn't make sense. So again, they are asking, why did he do that? So the answer, when he came back to Pharaoh, okay, and he told him, I need to go and bury my father, I made an oath, that would make everything legit and okay and will not get no objections from nobody, because an oath back then was known and a consensus between the Jewish and the Egypt and everybody. And that's it.
We're running out of time, but I have one question for you, Adam, if you want to leave it on. So you're talking to us about the Hebrew language and how Joseph reveals himself. And speaking to the brothers in Hebrew was such a huge part of them being sure that it really was him. So this has a lot of parallels with Yeshua.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit, how meaningful was it for you in coming to understand who Yeshua is, how meaningful was it for you to read the Gospels in Hebrew, to realize, what was your journey of realizing that he's a Jew, and him revealing his identity to you, actually? What was the role of all of that?
Okay, so that brings me to a personal journey I had. Coming to know Yeshua, and I have in my concept very distinguished between Yeshua and Jesus, is you. And me coming here to America is Parashat Vayigash. Okay? Yeah, no, cool story. So, two stories, both of them very funny. And give me a second to just tell them, and then I will address everything. So, we came here in 2015. The whole family decided to move forward through a business visa. Okay? We got here, and then God decided to unleash hell. Okay? It was Florida. We couldn't find anything. Whatever plan we had was destroyed. Okay? My business was real estate. Things went like a bundle of, I don't know, like a snowball, no Wi-Fi, kids, hot. And then the air condition went down. I'm telling you, it was like a mess. I cannot even tell you. The Exodus is nothing. But the thing is this, so we decided to come back to Israel. Something went wrong in Morocco, and never mind. We decided to come back to Israel, okay? We almost had nothing left except our place of work. We actually sold everything, okay, liquidized all of our assets, and that's it. And then realized that it's not like we planned. Okay, my wife is an engineer, so if she plans something and it goes wrong, she has something like she gets a null. Nah. So she told me, you know what? Let's come back to Israel. Thank you very much, America. We enjoy. But I was in a situation where I knew that I'm coming back, and Daniel, my firstborn, had a bar mitzvah. The parasha was Parashat Vayigash. And I promised, again, I swore, took an oath, to my father-in-law to teach him. Okay, that was my first reading, just for you to know, like taking it seriously, going into that. Until that, we had a lot of problems. We couldn't find nobody to interact with. We were basically alone after coming from Israel, which you are always surrounded with your family. I went to a synagogue. They told us put a mezuzah. So I went to a synagogue. I asked for a mezuzah. They told me it's not there. You should go to another synagogue. It is the King Messiah. Never mind, Orthodox people, okay? And they told me $50 for the mezuzah. I told them that's too much. I'm still in shekels. It's like 3 times. I'm going to write it myself. Went back to my wife, told her, we'll have to manage without the mezuzah. Things will come through. Then I had a conversation with my father-in-law. He told me, you have to do something with Daniel. He cannot come here knowing nothing. I told him, okay. I'll take my laptop. We'll go to the synagogue. I was sitting there, and we were doing Vayigash Elav Yehuda Vayomer Bi Adoni Yedaber Na'avdecha Velo Yechacha. Okay, we were doing that back and forth. When I stood up, somebody stood up in front of me, and he touched my chest, saying, "You are Adam Kadosh." Now, this guy was a soldier of mine. He was like got very religious and stuff, and he was with the talit, and he just heard my voice. Okay, just heard my voice, and we had a very special relationship in the army. I was the one responsible for making him tough. Okay, and he wasn't tough when he got to me, and I made him tough. So he remembers me very clearly. And basically, this guy is the one responsible for us staying here, because he got water out of the rock. Yeah, my wife was so excited because they, again, hugged us. Like this community is hugging us, and again, that's another thing for Karen. And we stayed. And when we decided to come back, that was our basically experience. That was Parashat Vayigash. And about Yeshua, so Yeshua is actually connected to Pesach. And I came to 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. It was one of the earliest places we were at the Yeah, I came with bringing meat, a brisket, and I sat down. I never heard about Messianic Jews, never heard about Yeshua, okay? I explained last week we had a conversation that basically we are some kind of a product of our education, our surrounding, our family, our community, our country, etc., etc. In Israel, Yeshua is not that known. You know Jesus. When I think about Jesus, the earliest memory I have is from we had like cartoon films about the history. Okay, he came from there on the cross, and then I remember him from all the vampires movies and etc. But Yeshua was not there. Yeshua is not in the picture in Israel also. Okay, kids do not learn about his origin, about whatever he's done. He's associated with Christianity, and a lot of the misunderstood and miscommunication and unknown factors into that equation. Something in Joey changed a lot in me, sitting over there, hearing him. He said something again, Hebrew comes into play. It was cool, it was funny. I stayed around and decided to explore into that again and again. And when I wanted to open this conversation saying that basically when Yeshua was teaching in the temple and in Jerusalem, he was teaching this, okay? He was teaching the Torah. The Torah was already written. He was teaching in Hebrew, okay? So the written word, okay, became flesh, and that's exactly what we are a part of. And by practicing Hebrew, which I do with the guys, I believe that I'm contributing something. I believe that it doesn't really matter if you say it 100%, because I don't say it 100%. Nobody said 100% like they did it, like Yeshua did it, like they did it back then. Even the cantonations, okay? And again, we're going back to the time where the world lost an opportunity and starting losing some of his spirituality in the temple, the second temple, and the going of Yeshua. And we know that they basically start forgetting the cantonations and even some of the words in Hebrew, and this is why they invented. If you go and you look at the books I'm reading, you can see a lot of small dots and all kinds of marking. So they had to do this because they started forgetting. And basically through forgetting, they started altering and changing meanings, okay? And you can see that while reading the Hebrew. And if I miss something and I read it in the wrong vowel, it gets a different meaning. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. This is I wanted to give Adam an opportunity to begin to really develop his gift of teaching. I believe he has a gift to teach, and this is the beginning. This is the beginning. So, all right. So we're going to transition now to our time of prayer and intercession. And I believe Lindsay is probably on the other side of the building or on the other building. But if you don't have anything to go to, then I'm going to stay here. We're going to continue with this time of intercession.